Hello, Mr. Dusek. Thanks for taking our interview.
Thanks for having me.
What is your expectations for China's economic growth for the future?
Well, first of all, we're very happy to be back in Dalian for the 15th Sommer-Davos. It's a great tradition that we have, convening our second largest gathering globally here in China. And we were in Tianjin last year, and as is tradition, we are in Dalian now. Speaking of tradition, we're also extremely happy that the Premier of China is again opening with his opening address. You may know he was in Davos with us in January and provided a lot of information in terms of economic priorities for China. And so we look forward to his address tomorrow on the economic picture there. And just to say also that this meeting has always played a very important role, because in a way it's three meetings in one. And so it's always been a global meeting, and so we'll be focusing a lot on the global economy here. And finally, it's always been a meeting about China, about the Chinese economy. And as I said, I'm sure also the Premier will talk about it. But I think what is also very important here is that we have a lot of business leaders from China participating here. And so for then the leaders from outside to be able to interact with them and maybe take a practical look at what is actually taking place in Chinese industry is very important. And finally, which I think is a very interesting area, and I think it's rising in importance, is people are very, very curious to understand what is taking place in the innovation ecosystem of China. But you see there is a lot of curiosity in industry and other, to really understand how things are done in terms of innovation in China, because things have been developing here, if you, for example, take the automotive sector or other sectors, quite uniquely. And so there is a lot of that as well. People are very curious to learn what's taking place in the Chinese economy.
As head of Europe and Eurasian of the forum, you have said in one of your articles called How to Increase Europe's Competitiveness in the New Global Economy. Two most important points you mentioned: investing in technology and skills and advancing the energy transition. This is also similar to the new productive forces and high-quality development, which have been frequently mentioned in China. So what does that mean for China and Europe? Does that mean competitive or cooperation? With the current international situation, how should China and Europe strive to achieve win-win results?
I think you actually mentioned something that is exactly on target in terms of when we work with different leaders from around the world, not only governmental leaders, but also business leaders and others. Really the intersection of, if I were to really simplify it, the intersection of energy and high-tech, particularly AI, I think is really the key nexus of competitiveness of the future. This is a big discussion right now. How do we make sure we really achieve that? And a big, of course, big role that is played in this equation is also by what we call emerging energy transition technologies. And so this is a very fast-moving landscape, from hydrogen deployment to as you know, there is a little bit of a revival around nuclear energies. It is really, there is a lot going on in this space. And the same with these advanced technologies, including, let's take AI. It is clear that this is a key driver of competitiveness for companies, for nations. And Europe is trying to find its way in terms of how to have the best value out of it for its industry, while at the same time making sure that it has a positive societal impact. And why I'm mentioning Europe in more detail, because I do believe, as you pointed out, that actually wherever you sit in the world right now, these are the questions you're grappling with. And so, of course, we are seeing different geographies, different governments tackling it a little differently. But at the crux of the crux of the matter is that everyone is facing those opportunities and challenges. And you mentioned cooperation and competition. Number one, there are clear efforts to find ways to coordinate, have more interoperability, more exchange. You see it, for example, on AI with the UN advisory panel that Secretary General Guterres set up, where it has Chinese experts, it has other experts. They're trying to figure out basically how to provide certain guardrails and governance around some of these AI technologies. And I think we need to recognize that it's a new field. It's really developing very fast. And we need to recognize that there are efforts. Of course, we hope there would be more, and we hope these efforts will succeed. But there are efforts. Now, of course, we also see that we see the behavior of considering some of these technologies also not only relevant to national security, which is one thing, but also technologies that are relevant to economic competitiveness and sovereignty. And so we are seeing, let's say, both. We are seeing in the international system efforts to coordinate and figure that out. And of course, we are seeing competition. Just to say that I think there is now consensus among, let's say, international relations scholars that we have entered, with the shocks of COVID and other shocks, we have entered a new era of international relations, which is arguably a little more competitive. But I think what is important and why we are excited to be here is that we believe that, yes, maybe it is a little more competitive, the conduct of state actors.
The World Economic Forum is the international organization for public and private cooperation. How does the World Economic Forum promote global cooperation and win-win results?
I think people are aware of the stakes, and we need to provide platforms, including this one, to really try to take a little bit of a practical look to see, okay, what are the swim lanes in which we can collaborate and where we can achieve things together, where maybe our interests are colliding in a positive way.
What do you think of the EU's decision to impose tariffs on China's new energy electric vehicles? German Vice Chancellor and Economic Minister Robert Habeck is currently in China, and he said overcapacity is not the problem. So what is your opinion?
I saw, of course, I read the articles I think you read, so I saw that I think also there was a call between Mr. Dombrovskis and his counterpart here in China, and I think they indicated that there would be a formal dialogue on the EV issue, and so I think I will leave it to the dialogue to run its course. But just to go back to what we discussed, that I mentioned AI, but also the electric vehicle sector, if you will, has undergone an amazing transformation. We see that on many of the technologies, China is, if not the leader, in some cases it is the clear leader, or in other cases or in other areas, it's part of the pioneers, if you will. So I think this is something where, again, we need to make sure that we bring everyone together and we have a very practical discussion. What we are doing here, because obviously this is an intergovernmental issue, as I said, there is a formal dialogue now being formed. But for example, what we're doing here is that, number one, we are trying to bring the innovators together. So you will see here in the program a lot of attention being paid. I think we have at least 3 sessions on EVs, different aspect. But it's not only, let's say, top Chinese experts talking about it, but it's also top international experts and others really being in dialogue on the future of the sector.
Many countries are currently seeking to build a so-called diversified supply chain. What do you think of the current trend of this international globalization and global trade?
I think you see that when I mentioned that we have entered a new new era in international relations, so that's one thing, geopolitically, if you will, but there is also the geoeconomic picture. And you're right that we have seen that I guess as a reaction to some of the shocks that we had with COVID and some of the geopolitical challenges, that you are seeing a reshuffling of value chains and supply chains. So there is also new geopolitical or geoeconomic groupings that are either being enlarged or set up that are influencing the value chains. So I think what is important is that companies are, again, well informed. They are able to have dialogue with decision makers in China, in Europe, in the United States. Now, what it means for global trade, this is something that, of course, we are watching very closely. We work very closely with the World Trade Organization, for example. And so there is, as you know, there is also some successes, for example, in the multilateral trading system, including fishing rights, etc. But of course, this is something that actually a lot of people are watching. What will we see out of this transition when we see this kind of behavior? What will the net effect be on trade volumes? Will it be just a reconfiguring, or will we see that this actually leads to fragmentation? And obviously, the risk of fragmentation is clear to everyone. IMF put it at 7% of global GDP if we have protracted economic fragmentation globally. And again, that's why we're here. That's why we're also addressing these issues in Davos.
Thanks a lot, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.